It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Howdy ho. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are you? Not too much time to chit-chat. We got a full show, 2 interviews. This is an author's show. We've got 2 authors on today. First one up is Ammar Habib. Ammar is an award-winning author who was born in Lake Jackson, Texas. He's written several books, including Dark Guardian Trilogy and Memories of My Future, which is a real interesting title. He will be up first, followed by Lorraine Reguly. Lorraine is an author and entrepreneur, and she helps others become authors. And she's got an incredible life story, which she'll tell us all about during the interview. So, not much time to chit-chat. Merry Christmas if you're listening to the show on Monday the 25th, which is when we uploaded it. And if not, then save the Merry Christmas for next year. We will be right back with Ammar Habib. Okay, please welcome my guest, Ammar Habib. Hi, Ammar. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me today on the show.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. And then thank you for your email. We always appreciate emails of people that have actually listened to the show prior to coming on. So I liked your email and was interested in having you on and your books. And before we get to all of that, I got your bio. And it says you're from Lake Jackson, Texas. Where is that exactly?
That's about an hour south of Houston. So it's an hour south of Houston, about 10, 15 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, all right. So not super cold down there, yeah?
Oh, no. Actually, we got snow 2 weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
That was the
really?
first time in 15 years we got snow. So that was a little exciting. But normally it's pretty hot all year round.
Why don't you just give us a little bit of your background, tell us a little about yourself, and then we'll talk about your books.
Yes, absolutely. So like you mentioned, I was born and raised in Lake Jackson, Texas. I still live there today, so I'm a full-blooded Texan. I've been writing for a long time. That's my profession right now, is as an author. And I really love what I do. It's one of my dreams to be a writer, so I'm really excited about pursuing that dream. But I'm 24 years old now. Outside of writing, I work at a community college as well as a student success consultant. But yeah, that's kind of about me.
Okay. 24 years old, so you're a pretty young man. What got you inspired to write? What started you off with this?
Actually, there were a few things that happened to me when I was a kid that inspired me to write. One thing is kind of my personality. I've always been more of an introvert than an extrovert. And so when I was a kid, there weren't that many kids living in the neighborhood. And so I had a lot of action figures when I was a kid. And I used to make up stories with them, just playing around with them. And I think that kind of unintentionally helped me grow my imagination when I was really young. And outside of that, my second grade teacher, her name is Miss Scott. She is one who inspired me to start writing when I was in her class. And she gave us a writing assignment where we had to take our spelling words and make a story out of it. And that was my first time to ever write a story, and I loved it. And that's kind of when the writer's bug bit me. But also kind of interesting, one of my friends, he's a medical doctor, and he was telling me that things like creativity can actually be passed down through the bloodstream. There's some research on that. Because I found out because my grandma on my mom's side, she was a writer, and my great grandpa on my mom's side, he was also a writer as well. So I don't know if it can really be passed down, through the bloodstream. But if it is, I probably got it from there as well.
Well, I've seen both with people. I've seen people whose parents or one parent was very creative, could have been a musician or an actor or something like that, and then the kids picked it up. Other times I've seen where it didn't happen. So
Right.
I think, when you're talking about DNA and genetics, it's a real crapshoot,
Right.
whether you get the gene or not. One thing interesting about writing is that a lot of people can do it to some degree. There's two basically types of writing. There's factual writing and then there's creative fiction writing. Do you think that factual writing takes any creativity or just a good command of the language?
Honestly, I've actually started branching out into nonfiction writing. And I would say that it takes a lot more creativity than I thought it would. Because when you're doing even nonfiction writing, you have to a lot of times find out a creative way to approach the subject that's going to entice the readers to it. So having that creative approach can also help a lot with nonfiction writing.
Okay, well, that's a good point. Have you ever read any of Ernest Hemingway's stuff?
It's been a long time. My teacher in high school, he was a huge fan of Hemingway, so I've read some of his shorter works.
Because I always thought that Hemingway, as great of a writer as he was, it seemed very textbook the way he wrote. And maybe that's why people liked it. It wasn't full of a lot of colorful words. He just kind of wrote it as it was. Which some people might argue didn't take creativity, but I'd have to disagree as far as Hemingway was concerned. But I don't know. What is your take on Hemingway?
Well, I actually liked his work. For some reason, I've never had a chance to read much more than what I read in high school. But I think what Hemingway teaches is that each writer needs to kind of find what works for them. So some writers, they do really great with the colorful, visual language, while some writers, they do better with a more technical language, like Hemingway.
Right.
So I think for writers, it's important to find what works for them or you as a writer and just go with that,
Well, like if you compared Hemingway with, say, Poe.
Right.
You're kind of at two opposite ends of the spectrum, but they were both sort of brilliant in what they did, yeah?
Yes, very true.
All right, so you've got, how many books have you got published now?
So I have 4 full novels published, a few more, I guess, novellas, and then also short stories and published in different magazines and stuff like that. What's
the difference between a novel and a novella?
I think it's the length. I believe a novel is anything considered, depending on a genre, has to be over 60,000 words to be a novel. I think a novella is a little longer than a short story. So maybe 10,000 words to 20,000 words.
Oh, okay. Because I've heard those terms before, but I never knew exactly what was the distinction between them.
I think everyone would tell you a different answer in terms of the numbers, but that's the basic, I think, distinction.
Okay. On your bio, it says that you're best-selling and award-winning. What awards have you won?
Well, the biggest one was this past May. My second novel, which is called Memories of My Future, it won the Independent Press Award for the category of best inspirational work, and that was a national award, and so it won that back in May 2017. So that's the most recent and the biggest award I've ever got.
It's an interesting title, Memories of My Future.
Yes.
Tell us a little about the book.
Sure, absolutely. This book I wrote with a friend of mine. His name is Dr. Sinha. He's a surgeon in the Houston area, and I've known him for a long time. So this novel, like the title suggests, it kind of goes between 3 different generations. It starts off with the main character. His name is Dr. Singh. He's a heart surgeon in New York City. And he is facing his first ever real failure in life, where he had a patient who had this new heart disease, and the patient dies on the operating table. And it's the first patient he's ever lost. So it kind of knocks him down. And what really hits him is the fact that this patient was a child who was the same age as Dr. Singh's brother when when he died. So it kind of knocks him down even more. So he starts to kind of find his courage to keep moving on. He looks into his past, in his past generations, one of which was a general in the 13th century in India, and the second who was a revolutionary in the 19th century in India. And he learned from their stories about courage and tenacity and, being willing to put your life on the line for the right thing. And through that, he finds his courage to not only beat the disease, but do a lot of other great things in his own life. So that's the basis of the story. The main message of the story is about not giving up. The story is about a big message of the story is different religions and different cultures, working together for the greater good of mankind, and kind of putting aside our differences for the greater good of everyone else. And also stories about the power one good person can do when they don't let fear hold them back.
Well, I think that's a great message. I wish we could get to that point with mankind. Unfortunately, there's still too many people that are holding on to all of that and are willing to die and kill other people in the name of whatever it is that they believe. And, it's too bad because on the one hand, we've advanced so much technologically, and yet in some areas we're still back in the Middle Ages almost.
Right.
It seems like we could have a much better world if we could get to that. I always thought the internet was going to be a great, I don't want to say savior, but something that was going to bring the world together. It's like the old thing about the old story about the only way we're going to put down our guns is if we get attacked by the Martians and we have a common enemy outside of this planet, and then everybody on the planet would join together to attack the Martians, to fight the Martians. Right. I always thought that the internet was going to be something like that, where once people started talking to each other, it was going to kind of unite the world. And maybe to some degree it has, but I don't know that we're quite there yet as a human race. I think we still have a lot of conflict.
Right, absolutely. And it's interesting, like you mentioned, maybe the names have changed, but the conflicts are all the same. It's based on, it's the same as the people fought over 1,000 years ago. It's about, what do you call God, or, what skin color you are, or, what you believe in. It's interesting, like you mentioned, like human beings they've advanced so much in terms of knowledge, but it's kind of sad that, people are still fighting over the same thing.
Exactly the same thing. And it was the same thing they were fighting, right, like 2,000 years ago they were fighting over it. And they're still fighting over it.
Right.
And I'm not particularly a religious person, although I do tend to feel spiritual from time to time, if that makes any sense. But,
No, it does.
I just, until something is proven, maybe agnostic might be a good description for me. Until something is proven, I tend to go with science. And science has been sort of dispelling little by little this whole concept of religion. However, having said that, I think religion is kind of a necessary thing for people because I think people need something. Otherwise, everyone's going to go crazy. I think people need to hold on to some sort of a belief that there is something beyond this because we still haven't explained what happens when you die. Science has not done anything to explain that. And I tend to believe that that's really what all the religions talk about. That there's variations of the theme, but basically it's like, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is only like one little part, the next life. But the problem with that for me is that because we don't know what the next life is, why waste this one, that we do know? Let's, make the most of this one, and then whatever happens after you die.
Right. Absolutely. My background is that I'm a Muslim, but obviously growing up in Texas, most of my friends were all Christian or Jew or Hindu or Buddhist. And what I found is kind of interesting is that every religion actually teaches to be a good human being. And honestly, if people followed their religion like it was taught, teaching them to be a good human being, we want to have the problems. So my opinion is that religion isn't the problem. It's more the people, the way they misinterpret religion, or the way they they follow one part, not the whole thing, and they follow a part which is good for them, but hurtful towards others. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and I appreciate what you said about how people misinterpret it. Because if you take the religion verbatim from what is written, you're right. They pretty much say the same thing. Be a good person, don't hurt other people, try to live a clean life. But when people try to interpret these things, because look at how much variation you have from the quiet man who goes to church every Sunday and minds his own business to, the Christian fanaticals who are out there protesting everybody who they don't agree with. And then the same with the Muslims. You've got nice Muslims that just mind their own business, and you've got ones who have taken to terrorism in the name of Allah, or I don't want to speak out of school on it because I don't know that much, but when they consider something like radical Islamic terrorism, they're using the Quran in a way that's adulterated, I think, from what it's actually saying.
Right.
It's dangerous when people take a religion out of context.
Yep, absolutely.
And it just is silly that, that people are still fighting over that, going back to what we were talking about 10 minutes ago. It's just crazy. But anyways, we're getting off topic here. Okay, you've got another book called, well, it's actually a trilogy called Dark Guardian. So
yes.
Trilogy is 3 books. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Sure, absolutely. So Dark Guardian was actually the first full novel I ever wrote. It's the first one I also did publish and everything. This is more of a superhero series, kind of a darker superhero series. So it follows a character named Ethan Daniels. He's a vigilante known as the Guardian in a city called Crown City. So basically, he's armed with some superhuman powers. He has an arsenal, weaponry, and some vast resources, and he's using them to fight not only the criminals, but his kind of corrupt government in his country. And that's kind of what the series is about. And we see him progress from a vigilante working from the shadows to more of a hero, and then into more of a legend. So this one, I'm a huge fan of comic books, so that was the inspiration for this series. And it's been really well received. The third one, the last part of the trilogy, came out about a month and a half ago, so that's the newest one. Yeah, that's a little bit about that series.
Okay. So the next obvious question is, are you trying to pursue this to get the film rights sold and to make this into a movie?
Oh yeah, I think every author would dream of having a movie made. I do have an agent now for my book agent. I know she has some connections in Hollywood. She sold some of her other clients their books to different studios and stuff. And so she told me she keeps her ears open. If it hears any opportunity, she'll let me know about this series. That's definitely always a possibility.
Are you making a living now as an author, or do you do something else as well?
No, like I mentioned, I work at a community college. In Lake Jackson. Yes, sir. I work as a student success consultant over there.
How does one make a living as an author? You have to sell a lot of books, or do you do the film rights? And it just seems like, because I'm a musician and I have a lot of musicians on this show, and
right.
This is a big conversation that we get into a lot about. Well, it's changed, because people don't buy records anymore. You used to be able to make a good living selling recorded music. And I always ask authors if they feel that technology has hurt that as far as people aren't really buying books anymore. But I think with authors, you're a little safer because you don't give it away like musicians do.
Right.
You know, musicians put it for free on YouTube with a video.
Right.
And then nobody wants to spend the money to download it because they can just listen to the song and watch the video on YouTube for free. Right. But with authors, I think they don't do that typically. You've got to go to Amazon or Kindle or something and download it, and you got to pay for that. Or people that like to actually have the book, you got to buy the book. So, I mean, is it possible to make a good living that way, just straight selling books, or do you have to venture into movie rights and all that as well?
Right. That's a great question. So this is kind of my understanding of what I've experienced. It's definitely possible to make a living off of books. But most authors who make a living off of books, they have 15, 20 books out there. So if you have 20 books out there and you're making, $200 a month off each book, and that would add up pretty quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
So most authors, like the Harry Potter one-hit wonder, is kind of a few and far between. Most authors, they have 5 or 6 books out before one gets famous, so to speak. I think technology has actually helped a lot of ways. I mean, in some ways it's hurt authors, but a lot of ways it's helped, especially the whole Amazon and ebooks and self-publishing. Because before, in the 80s or 90s, from what I understand, if you were self-publishing a book, you won't really have anywhere to sell it outside of you kind of going around the bookstores and asking them to put it on their shelves on consignment. But with Amazon, it's been awesome for authors who want to self-publish a book at almost no cost. If a publisher won't pick your book up, you can always go to Amazon, self-publish it, and then you can set the price. And they give a very nice return rate. I believe ebooks, they give about 70% royalties to the author, compared to Barnes & Noble, which only gives 30% royalty to author. So in that way, it's really helped. The downside is that since it's so easy to do, now there are a lot more books out there, so it's harder to get yours to stand up above the crowd. That's why authors have to be really active now with social media and interviews and giveaways, just to get their name out there. So I think, like anything else, technology is a double-sided coin. And obviously, getting a film deal is a huge help, a boost to the income. But yeah, technology itself is a double-sided coin. Now it's easier to get your work published. It's easier to there are more avenues to promote through social media, blogging. But at the same time, since it's so accessible now, the downside is that there is more published, so it's harder to get your name to kind of rise above the rest, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the same situation as music, because anybody can get their songs out there. Now, you have to wade through so much to find the good stuff. There's just so much out there to get your name, familiar with people. Like you said, you've really got to be pounding on social media. And I guess going around doing book signings is the author's equivalent of doing a live concert, yeah? Because
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that way people get to see you in person and get to say hello. And how viable is the actual book market these days? Or do most people do ebook?
I think book markets are still going strong. I mean, there's some people who are never going to do ebooks. Some people love the published books. So I don't think they'll ever go away completely. But last I heard, I think the statistic is a couple years old now, Amazon was saying 70% of their books were ebooks that they were selling. And Amazon is right now the biggest bookseller. They're much more bigger than the Barnes & Noble or any store. So they're saying that ebooks are their main thing. And I've seen that as well. Even with my books, for every print copy sold, there are usually maybe 10 or 11 ebooks sold. So yeah, I definitely think ebooks are quickly taking over, especially with the younger people. They're more into ebooks. They can read stuff on their phone, read stuff on their tablets or whatever they read it on. But I definitely think print books aren't going away, because some people love to get a print book and get it signed by the author and keep it as a memorabilia. But at the same time, I think ebooks are going to continue, probably grow more popular as time passes.
Oh, well, that's what I do. I've got a whole stack of them here from various authors that have been on the show. And especially if I travel, taking a paperback with me is just, you know what it is too, when you're on the plane for a long flight, a real book is easier on the eyes than staring at a pad. I don't know, after reading about 100 pages off of a pad, my eyes are going goo-goo, but,
right.
But a real book, I don't get that feeling. So I don't know if it's just the backlight, that's hurting my eyes or what, but I kind of like having the book, although it depends on what it is. Like if it's going to be a full novel, yeah, I'd rather have the book. But if I'm reading like a owner's manual of some, appliance that I just bought, then, fine, I can pull that up on a PDF file, because it's easy to reference. It's quick that way.
Absolutely.
So I think they both have their place. I got into this conversation with a musician where we were talking about vinyl records versus digital download. And it was kind of the same comparison. It's like, well, when you're in the car, or if you're on a bus, or if you're on a plane, then to have, 1,000 songs on your phone is great because you can just listen to whatever you want. But if you're at home and you really want the full experience, then there's nothing like a vinyl record. The sound is just amazing. Digital tends to sterilize the sound. So, okay, well, you said you were 24 years old. That's very young. What do you see yourself doing in 20 years?
Well, sir, my dream as a kid was always be a New York Times bestselling author. So that's kind of my goal right now. So definitely pursuing that. I have several more projects at different stages of development. So really my plan is just to keep pushing with the writing career, slowly grow to a point where it can be my full-time occupation, and then just take it from there.
Oh, well, that's a great goal. I hope you succeed with that.
Thank you.
The world needs good authors. And I wish you the best of luck. We are out of time, unfortunately, for this interview. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And
thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a real pleasure speaking to you.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Tired of living in a culture of lies, fake news, and alternative facts? The Pro-Truth Pledge reverses the tide of lies by calling on politicians, and everyone else, to commit to truth-oriented behaviors. The pledge asks signees to commit to 12 behaviors that research in behavioral science shows lead to truthfulness, such as clarifying one's opinions and the facts, citing one's sources, and celebrating people who update their beliefs toward the truth. Private citizens who sign the pledge get the benefit of contributing to a more truth-oriented society. Public figures get more substantive rewards for signing the pledge in the form of positive media and public recognition. The pledge crowdsources the truth by asking volunteers to evaluate the statements of public figures who sign the pledge. Take the pledge, demand that your elected representatives do so, and encourage your friends to take it at protruthpledge.org.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
And now...
Hey, Rocky! Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat! See? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Wrong hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Lorraine Reguly. How are you, Lorraine?
I'm great. How are you, Doug?
Doing very well. I noticed on your Skype that you're in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I had to look at the Google map to find that because in my head, I thought you were on Hudson Bay, but you're actually...
No, I'm actually on the very tip of Lake Superior. Like
right.
the furthest most north, right.
Well, it's probably not that far from there to Hudson Bay, is it?
You know what? I don't travel that much in Ontario, so it's probably not that far, but I've never been there.
Okay. I guess my point was that it's probably still really cold in the wintertime where you are.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. December, January, and February are our coldest months. Right now, it's about -11, and that's in Celsius. So I don't know what that works out to be in Fahrenheit, but put it this way, damn cold.
Yeah. You know what's funny about Celsius and Fahrenheit? When you start getting down into the minuses, they're almost the same thing.
Yeah, and in January, we get temperatures of like -30, -40. I mean, that's common stuff. Like, you have to let your car sit for 5 minutes to warm up in the winter.
Do you have one of those?
Just before you can eat. No, I don't have a car, thank God. But even still, it takes quite a while to adjust. You never really adjust to these types of temperatures. Like, people think, oh, well, you've been living in it for years, you're used to it. Well, yeah, I'm not used to it, though. You don't get used to cold like that.
Anyways, enough with the weather. Let's get on with your story. And thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And thank you to Max for putting us in touch.
Yeah, Max is an awesome guy.
Yeah, he's great.
He's one of my biggest inspirations.
He was on the show about 7-8 months ago, I guess, and well, maybe longer than that. But he was had a real interesting story. And I guess he did his Christmas to New York City via train that he was talking about. So that was last Christmas. So, okay, God, it's over a year then that he's been on.
It's been a year, yes. And, we're just in the final stages of putting his book together. We've faced some delays along the way, and now we're getting close to putting it out there for the world to hear and read about.
So he wrote a book about his adventure?
He sure did. He chronicled his journey along the way. He basically started out by telling people about the different contests that he entered, and he won one very prestigious contest award, which was the Writers in Residency Award from Amtrak.
Oh, nice.
And there's only apparently 24 winners in all of the United States that are selected to go on this journey, and he was one of them. And I was so impressed with him when he told me that he was going to actually write a book about his whole adventures, where he decided to go and what he decided to do. So he chose to travel from Houston, Texas to New York City over the Christmas and New Year's holidays last year, all by train alone, as a blind man. And that just was, to me, simply amazing, because you think of people traveling, and it's hard enough to travel by yourself, but when you're blind,
right.
It has to be 10 times more difficult. He has no fear.
Yeah. He was real excited about doing that when I spoke with him. I asked him, I said, you're going alone. Okay. I said, why don't you bring a dog? Get a guide dog, because they can go anywhere. And he says, no, I don't have a dog. I think if I was blind, I'd want my dog. I really do.
Well, he doesn't have a guide dog. He walks using a cane, and he just gets help from people that he's with. So if he had a guide dog to begin with, I'm sure he probably would have maybe considered that. But because he didn't, he just chose to, travel with his cane and the grace of God.
Now, did anybody video this adventure?
Yes and no. He had a camera, and he had taken quite a few pictures, which I've included a lot of the pictures in the book. And he also had some kind of recordings, not video per se, but he had some audio recordings that he did. And I'm not sure where exactly they all ended up. I know he put a couple on YouTube, but I think that was mostly of him singing on the train. Because he loves to sing, and everybody loves his singing. So he recorded some songs for YouTube.
Okay. I didn't know he sang. So is he a good singer?
So, he is a very good singer, actually.
Oh, okay. I'll have to get him back on the show and talk about his trip, because I think that'd be really interesting. Anyways, let's get to your book and your life story, because it's also very interesting. Your book is called From Nope to Hope: How to Overcome Suicidal Thoughts and Live a Happier Life. Your story is, well, it's sad, and it's also very poignant, I guess is a nice word to use.
My life's been basically a roller coaster of ups and downs, and the downs are really, really, down. And so, I can understand how people would look at my life and say, "Oh my God, look at all this shit that she's been through."
Well, yeah.
But yet, I was able to overcome a lot of it, and now I decided. In the past year, I decided to share all of the strategies and techniques that I've used to deal with my memories, my emotions, my depression, my suicidal thoughts, and all the, negative kind of repercussions of everything I've been through, and move on past them to live a happier life and to actually be able to enjoy every single day. And that's something that I think most people struggle with in general, is enjoying life on a daily basis. And so my book doesn't only help people who are depressed, but it helps everybody, really. I mean, you don't have to be suffering from suicidal thoughts in order to benefit from the book, because it's basically a self-help book wherein you can just apply the same strategies that I use to become happy and remove all the negativity from your life and just be able to enjoy every single day.
Now, does your book cover your story? I mean, is it biographical and says, okay, this happened, and then it kind of
I have one chapter devoted entirely to basically the times of my life where I was extremely suicidal, or felt had those suicidal thoughts, and it's the longest chapter in the book. I also included the stories of 4 other people that I know, although I changed their names for privacy purposes, but they shared their own experiences of their suicide attempt and what they did. And one of the guys, in fact, had become one of my Facebook friends. And a few months after we became Facebook friends, he sent me a message and he said, I just came to learn that you were the one that saved my life a few months ago. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And he said, well, I read your article on your blog about your suicide attempt and what you did in order to kind of overcome things in your life. And he said, I was looking for ways to kill myself. He said, and I came across your story and I read it. And he said, I decided not to kill myself after that. No. And I was like, wow. And so he ended up sharing, and the reason he wanted to kill himself was all because of a girl. He really liked this one girl, and the feelings weren't mutual. And being a teenager, he was I think he was 16 or 17 at the time. So he, that was a major thing for him. And I'm in my 40s now, but I had tried to kill myself when I was 15. And I wrote the article, I want to kill myself. What do I do? And I wrote all about my experience of trying to take pills and overdose and die. And then I wrote about, my son, because I'm a single mother. I wrote about how I ended up becoming a teacher, but also that I got involved with, because I had been raped when I was a virgin. That's kind of how everything all started. That was an incident that devastated me completely and changed the course of my life forever. And subsequently, caused me to have depression and everything because I didn't tell anybody about it and I didn't get any kind of counseling until 8 years later. And so my mindset and all my beliefs, everything had been destroyed in the process as a result of being raped. And so it led me to use drugs to cope, to drink to help cope, to do anything I could to numb those feelings because I didn't know how to deal with the trauma. And it also led me to get involved with prostitution and being very promiscuous and looking for love in all the wrong places and things like that. And so it was a horrible incident that basically, caused one event that caused a whole bunch of other events in my life, all negative. And then I ended up becoming a single mother at the age of 18. And I decided, well, I want to give my son a better life. And so I went back to school because I had quit school too. I mean, that was another consequence of being raped. I didn't have any desire to finish school or even attend school. But my son basically saved my life time and time again. I went back to school. I got my two degrees. I ended up teaching for a while. I mean, ultimately, I was in an accident and that I almost lost my leg. And so I didn't return to teaching after that. I eventually started my own business. And that's what I'm doing now and what I've been doing for the last about 4 years now. And so time and time again, I mention, how I didn't want to leave my son motherless. And so he was basically why I'm still here and why I didn't end up, attempting suicide a second or a third or a fourth time, even though I wanted to. He saved my life time and time again. And even after he decided to leave home, 3 years later, we reconnected. And that was basically when he, once again, helped me move my life in a more positive direction. Because he advised me. I asked him it was funny because it was exactly 5 years ago. And I asked him what he wanted for Christmas. And he said, I don't want anything. He said, just take that money and buy yourself something that you really want or, something you really need. And I thought, okay, well, I've always wanted to pursue my career in writing and, publish some books and things like that. And so I ended up buying a book called The 2013 Writer's Market and started researching publishers again because I had written a book while I was in university and my professor encouraged me to get it published. So anyways, when we reconnected back in 2012, that's what I ended up doing. I bought the book and subsequently bought my laptop, my first laptop, and started blogging 4 days later. Because after reading the book, it said, authors are now expected to help promote their own works and they're expected to have a blog and they're expected to be on social media and, they're expected to do like all of these other things other than just writing. Right. And it's like, holy smokes. Okay, so you want me to do these 10 things here in addition to just, having my book published. So I started blogging and it's kind of funny because that ended up turning into a freelance business because people liked my writing so much that they hired me to write blog posts for them. And then I added editing because I love editing. I love writing. I love anything to do with words. And so my freelance writing and editing business just kind of took off from there. And then once I became an author, I learned all about self-publishing. Then I added those services to my business so that I could help other people become authors as well. And I'm proud to say now that, I've helped Max, who's a blind man, an awesome person, an inspiration. He's written, well, first of all, he's an entrepreneur. He runs 2 different websites. He's on social media. He's blind, and he's doing all of this. And to top it all off, he used to weigh over 500 pounds. Then he lost some weight, went and had gastric surgery, lost more weight, and now he's around the 250 pound mark. And he's, I think, like 6'4". So 250 is a pretty decent weight for being 6'4".
Yeah, that's not bad.
And, having lost and kept off all that weight over the years. So I encouraged him after he wrote his first book, which was about, how to be successful basically no matter what, leading you out of the darkness into the light. After he wrote that book, I encouraged him to write a book about weight loss and how to keep off the weight, because that's something that he's done, and it's something anybody who's ever tried to lose weight and keep it off struggles with. And so he wrote, It's Not the Cookie, It's the Bag. And it's an easy to follow guide for weight loss success. And I even applied some of his strategies to my own life because I've always been a bigger woman. And so they work. I can tell you for a fact that they work. He's like a jack of all trades kind of guy. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a motivational speaker. He's a life coach. He does everything now. And now he's an online media publicist. He's the person who contacted you and put you and I in touch.
Right.
So, he's trying to help promote people and hook them up with the right podcasts and the right websites to be featured on and things like that. And for the first time in my life, I am happy. I am genuinely satisfied with my life and proud of where I am and proud of where I'm going. It's just amazing.
Oh, that's fantastic. You had mentioned something about your businesses. Is that actually the blog writing that you're talking about?
The blog writing, yeah, I do a lot of blogging for myself, and when I was into guest posting, trying to build up my own readership on my blog, I started guest posting, and it was one guest post actually that led me to Max, and another guest post that led me to my first client. And he wanted me to write articles for his website on a monthly basis, and so I started doing that. And then I realized, okay, you know what? I am now freelancing. I can turn this into a business. And so back then, I only had a free website on WordPress.com. And so I ended up moving my website over to a self-hosted website, which allowed me so much more freedom because now all of a sudden I could monetize my site. I could install Google AdSense.
Right.
I can start selling my services. I can put buy now for the PayPal buttons. I had so much more freedom. And so I did start offering more services. Wording Well is the name of my business. It's registered with the Canadian government and everything. It's all 100% legit, and I love it. And my favorite thing that I'm doing now is I'm actually focusing more on the editing aspect of things, and I'm editing novels for people, and like fiction novels, as well as nonfiction books, whether they're self-help books or whether they're books about a different topic. So right now I'm working with one client who is heavily into psychology, and he's writing, I'm not sure if it's going to be just a book available to the general public or if he's going to turn it into like a textbook type of a book, but it's a pretty scholarly piece of writing that he's written. And so, I mean, I can, do basically anything and everything, although I do draw the line at sci-fi and fantasy. I do not read those kind of things in my personal life. And so in my professional life, I refuse to edit anything in those genres.
Where do you want to go in the next 5 years with your business? Do you want to keep expanding it, or?
I want to keep expanding it, yes. I want to write more books myself. I have an idea for a series of blogging books and tutorial type books that will just be ebooks and super, easy to follow for people who struggle with different aspects of blogging and different tools that are out there that are available to use that are free that people just don't take advantage of. Things like Just Retweet. That's a free tool. You just hook it up to your Twitter account. You basically tweet others' writings or blog posts or whatever, and you earn credits. And then you put yours up and you have other people tweet for you. So it's another way to really expand your readership and get more traffic to your website and more eyeballs on what you've got on your website. And it's particularly good for businesses who want to grow their businesses and acquire new customers. So I have that kind of in the planning stages at the moment. And I would like to write a fiction novel. I have an idea for a fiction novel. I've never actually tried to write a full-length novel myself. I've written many short stories, however. That was what my first book was about. It had 5 short stories in it, and that book is called Risky Issues. And that was kind of, in my mind, it was kind of my practice book to make sure I went through all the right steps of self-publishing with the, having the proper cover created and the files formatted properly for Amazon and for CreateSpace available in print and things like that. So I made that one a fairly short book. Once it turned out perfectly, I was like, okay, now I can go ahead and I can help Max with his book. I can write more books of my own, which I did. I wrote From Nope to Hope, and I mean, that's in over 300 pages right there. And the cool thing with Nope to Hope, From Nope to Hope has a built-in workbook. At the end of each chapter, there's exercises for the readers to do so that they can actually put into practice the things that they've learned from me in that chapter and apply it to their own life. And once they start taking action by doing those exercises, they notice a big difference in their own lives, in the way that they feel, in the different things that they have happened to them. For example, dealing with negativity. I mean, we all have somebody in our life that kind of always puts us down, right? I'm sure there's one of your friends or family members that's always kind of picking on you a little bit, or things like that. And I talk about like how to deal with that type of negativity. For me, it's my father. He is always picking on me for every little tiny thing, and so I decided that I would write about, how to overcome negativity, how to deal with it, how to remove negative people from your life, not on a permanent basis, although it could be permanent. But I mean, like for me, my mom and dad still live together. So if I want to see my mom, I have to encounter my dad and deal with him. And so, even though I'm removing the negativity from my life, I'm not removing it 100%. I'm basically dealing with it. So there's a difference there. And, I've learned how to deal with it, and I've learned how to speak to my father in a better manner so that he doesn't pick on me as much and doesn't cause me to feel, all those negative, crappy emotions being belittled and berated and all those things. So it's a really helpful book. And I encourage everybody out there, if you're dealing with any kind of instance in your life where you're just not happy with a certain area of your life, go take a look at the chapters and The chapter titles are listed. I'm pretty sure they're listed on Amazon on the Look Inside feature. They're also listed on my website, Wording Well. It's that's actually the cheapest place to buy my book if money is an issue for some people, which I know it is. You can get it for like $10 on my website, whereas on Amazon it's $17, and then as a print version it's considerably more. But on my website, Wording Well, there's a page that talks about From Nope to Hope, and it talks about all of the different things that are included in that book. There's another article on my author site called From Nope to Hope, Book and Ebook Release. So it also talks about the different types of contents in the book. It includes all of the chapter headings. The table of contents is clearly listed there. There's 21 chapters. And I'll just read out a couple of the chapter titles. Temporary and long-term coping strategies to use. Identify emotions and release negativity from your life. Change your mindset by using positive affirmations. Use meditation, the law of attraction, and visualization. Form healthy habits one step at a time. Improve your self-image. Alternative treatments and counseling. Acceptance, spirituality, and your will to change. Create your path to a happier life. Put your plan into action by setting and attaining goals. Assess your growth, conquer procrastination, how to make your happiness last, what to do if your suicidal thoughts return. And like I said, there's also 4 stories, mine and 3 other people's, about our own experiences with suicidal thoughts and depression and things like that. Plus, there's another chapter about the after effects of suicide, DK's story. He's one of my Facebook friends, and his sister had committed suicide. And 9 months after this happened, I approached him and I said, I'd really love for you to share, some of the things your family's going through now as a result of your sister's suicide. Would you like to contribute to my book? And so basically, through Facebook Messenger messages, we ended up writing this chapter together. English is not his first language, and so when he was telling me something, I rewrote it and I said, okay, is this what you're trying to say? And he said, yes. He said, I love exactly how you've written the whole story, because I basically, put it together through all of his messages, sent it back to him, and he made a couple of alterations and said, no, like this is where it's supposed to be, and this is more like what happened. And so we put it all together, and we co-wrote that chapter, which is such a powerful chapter because it talks about, the realities of what families go through when someone in that family ends up killing themselves. And I mean, I can't tell you how many tears that I shed while talking with him and, messaging him about this. I mean, I cried more writing this book than I have cried in years, let me tell you.
Lorraine, we've got to wrap this up. We just blew right through the time.
Oh, wow.
What is your website again?
I have 2 websites. One is Wording Well. That's my business website, wordingwell.com. And my author site is simply my name, LorraineReguly.com.
Okay. And your book is called From Nope to Hope, How to Overcome Suicidal Thoughts and Live a Happier Life. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was very informative. It was very interesting to hear your story. Best of luck.
Doug, I really appreciate you having me here.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, Ammar Habib and Lorraine Reguly. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.
To the